Good evening. I'm Melissa Ridgen with your APTN News Weekend. History was made in Rome, Italy yesterday when Pope Francis apologized for the Catholic Church's role in the horrific abuses conducted at residential schools. Here's Tina House from Vatican City.
As over 200 delegates gathered at the Vatican for a final audience with the Holy See, emotions were high as they awaited to see if all the testimony from survivors and presentations from leaders made an impact on the Pope. Fred Kelly was the first to do a prayer.
Holy Father, may the Creator, the Great Spirit, bless us today as we meet, that we can walk into the future aware that we must allow and follow the 7 laws of creation, and so that we can live not only in peace and harmony, but in the meantime that we can find that reconciliation and the healing.
And after the prayers were spoken, the Pope finally said the words many have been waiting for.
For the deplorable conduct of these members of the Catholic Church,
e vorrei dirvi di tutto cuore, sono molto addolorato.
I ask for God's forgiveness, and I want to say to you with all my heart, I am very sorry.
Since the late 1800s, residential schools were established in Canada. Over 150,000 Indigenous children were forcibly removed from their homes. Their parents faced jail time if they tried to stop the removal of their children, and oftentimes did not even know where they were. And meanwhile, many of those children suffered terrible abuses that left them scarred for life, and for others, they just never made it home. And here in Rome, the historic meetings between Pope Francis and the Indigenous delegation, the leadership here says this week has laid down a path to walk forward in reconciliation.
And so our message to the world is that we are all in this together. We're human beings. Let's work together to humanize the way we need to with Mother Earth.
For Métis National Council President Cassidy Caron, she says it was an emotional time listening to that long-awaited apology.
I truly felt the sincerity in Pope Francis's words. I felt that he truly translated the truths that we all shared this week from his head into his heart.
For the Tecamaciztecumwepum, that confirmed discovery of 215 hidden graves of children really intensified the urgency for the Catholic Church to admit wrongdoing and begin to make amends like what was done today. If those little ones were here today to hear that word sorry, what do you think that they would be feeling?
I think if those little ones were here today to hear those words that came from him, I think would be a step in that right direction. But I think that it's really important also for those parents. So to me, it's going to be something that's extremely important and gives hope to those little ones as well, to know that he is doing those right steps.
And over in St. Peter's Square, powwow dancers and singers performed in celebration of this new path that's been forged, one that holds promise for a new beginning and a chance at healing. And with that long-awaited apology here in Rome, Pope Francis has now promised to come to Canada in July to officially apologize to Indigenous people in Canada. Tina House, APTN National News, Rome.
One of the delegates has been waiting a long time to hear that apology. Here's Tina House with Grand Chief Willy Littlechild at St. Peter's Square at the Vatican.
Thank you. I'm here today with Grand Chief Willy Littlechild, who was there when Pope Francis apologized to the residential schools in Canada. Grand Chief, how was it for you to hear those words, "I'm sorry"?
It was very, very emotional at a number of levels. First of all, 6 years going across the country, listening to over 7,000 survivors. Many of them called for that they said in order for me to heal, I need to hear the Pope say, "I'm sorry." And from that one perspective, and for an individual perspective, it took me a very long time to try and heal myself from the trauma of residential school, because I was in residential school for 14 years. And many times I was hearing my own story. So shedding tears with the survivors, sometimes laughing with the survivors, celebrating with the survivors. So it was a very, very important call that we made, I thought, from the Commission, to call on the Pope to come to Canada and apologize to the survivors, because we're losing so many on a daily basis now. So it was very special, because also it's my birthday today, and it's probably the best birthday gift I'll ever receive, to hear the apology from His Holiness, the Pope. He not only said, "I am sorry," he went beyond that and said, "I'm very sorry," which was more emphatic in a sense of emotion, more impact in sense of emotion. But we need to hear that at home. He needs to come to Canada, which he said he would, but share the same apology to the living survivors and all those that have gone ahead on their spirit journey.
Grand Chief, your story is very powerful. You've connected with so many others that have the same story as you. Happy birthday, Grand Chief. What an amazing gift today for all of us in Canada watching your story evolve, and the stories of other people being able to share their truth, to share their honesty about what truly happened. Is this a moment for you to now truly start to heal from what happened to you?
Yes, it is. It's also, I think, very, very important to signal it as a start of reconciliation. Now that we know the truth of what happened, the truth is still unfolding, but it's also now time to turn to true reconciliation. And I think today, with that apology that we had, begins that journey to reconciliation together.
Grand Chief, thank you for being such an incredible leader for our people. Thank you very much, and happy birthday again.
Thank you.
Back to you in studio.
The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. Well, 2 months ago, the Williams Lake First Nation in BC announced the discovery of a possible unmarked grave site at residential school in the Williams Lake area. This prompted a visit from Canadian Prime Minister just this past week. Rob Smith was there. He brings us this story.
Children greet the Prime Minister. Grandchildren, great-grandchildren of those that went to the school, unaware of the horrors their ancestors faced. Later, the Prime Minister meets those people that lived through those horrors.
I'm mostly here to listen.
Chief Fred Robbins suffered sexual and physical abuse at the St. Joseph's Residential School.
I'm going to be blunt. Reconciliation is a word for those that are privileged. It's not a word for those that have lived through these residential schools.
The St. Joseph's Residential School operated in the Williams Lake area in BC for over 100 years. Earlier this year, Williams Lake First Nation announced the discovery of 93 possible unmarked graves near the site, adding to the list of graves found all across the country.
We know that survivors were compensated, those that did survive. But what about those that didn't survive? What about their families? What about their communities? You know, reparations for these institutions is an ongoing issue that we have to face in this country.
Trudeau announced $2.9 million to fund the ongoing investigation into the graves. That's on top of $1.4 million provided by the federal government earlier this year.
It gives me hope moving forward that the things and the commitments that we talked about today are going to, make that meaningful impact.
Sing a couple of songs, and while we're singing,
and we're not living up to the kind of country we all like to think we are.
Chief Robbins welcomes the federal money, but believes it's not enough.
Are they willing to go to that next step and take this to the Supreme Court of Canada to recognize the genocide that happened?
Rob Smith, APTN National News, Williams Lake, British Columbia.
We need to take a short break, but still had new charges against an elderly priest for crimes allegedly committed in the north. We'll tell you about that when we return. Welcome back. A Roman Catholic priest who the Inuit delegates talked about in their meeting with the Pope, he's facing a new criminal charge, but history shows getting it to stick could be difficult. Father Johannes Rivoire is now facing a charge of sexual assault that happened, police claim, back in Nunavut 47 years ago. The 93-year-old now lives in France, a country that doesn't extradite its citizens to face charges elsewhere. In 1997, Rivoire was charged with 3 counts of sexual abuse here. They were dropped in 2017 because Canada said France wasn't cooperating. At the Vatican on Monday, Inuit leader Nathan Obed asked the Pope for help to return Rivoire to Canada to face the courts. A Mohawk community near Montreal is waiting for a Jesuit priest's remains to be moved off their lands. An independent investigation was conducted between October 2021 and February 2022. It found no proof that Father Leon Lajoie had committed alleged sexual assaults on Kahnawake territory, but community members voted over the weekend to remove him regardless. Lindsay Richardson explains.
It came down to a difference of nearly 30 votes. 195 residents voted to keep Father Léon Lajoie interred here at the Jesuit mission on Kahnawake Mohawk territory, while 223 residents voted to exhume his remains and move them to a Jesuit cemetery 65 kilometers north. An independent firm appointed by the Jesuit Order of Canada recently investigated a number of allegations of sexual assault made against Lajoie, and in their executive summary found most community members' claims couldn't be substantiated.
One of our concerns is that initially we were led to believe there were as many as 20 people in the community that had been allegedly assaulted or victims of some type of impropriety at the hands of Father Lajoie. And as you will see in the executive summary, only 3 people were identified, and really only 1 reached out to us. But we did find a finding of fact that 1 person was abused. We just can't support the position that it was Father Lajoie due to a number of things that I can't share.
But as the voting results show, a number of members want action regardless. In a statement, Mohawk Council Chief Tanya Perron acknowledged the ballot may have provided resolution for some, whereas for others it has caused great pain. We only hope that the path moving forward paves the way for healing for everyone. Representatives with the Kahnawake Longhouse didn't participate in the vote, but acknowledged the Lajoie situation as a triggering issue, saying in a press release they feel relocation is a necessary measure for Kahnawake Rono to begin their healing journey and attain the closure they need. The Jesuits of Canada say they'll be consulting the community about the relocation and are working to get legal clearance to exhume Father Lajoie's remains. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Kahnawake, Mohawk Territory.
To Ontario now, where First Nations organizations are calling for the immediate dismantling of the Thunder Bay Police Service. This comes on the heels of a new report that recommends further investigation into the sudden deaths of 15 Indigenous people in that city. Fraser Needham reports.
It is now painfully clear that Indigenous peoples have no trust in the Thunder Bay Police Service or the Thunder Bay Police Services Board. The repeated failures of the Thunder Bay Police Service require a fundamental re-examination of whether it should continue to exist.
These stark words come from the Grand Council Chief of the Anishinaabe Nation, Reg Naganobi. Anishinaabe Aski Nation Deputy Grand Chief, Anna Betty Acne Pinscom, also attended the press conference at Queen's Park Tuesday morning. Acne Pinscom says First Nations people simply have no more faith in the city's police force, where 9 cases have had to be reinvestigated.
First Nation leadership expects that the deaths of their community members will be investigated by competent professionals other than the Thunder Bay Police Services.
2018 report found systemic racism within the force and a tendency toward incomplete investigations when it comes to deaths of Indigenous people. Critics say nothing has been done in subsequent years to follow up on the report's recommendations, and municipal officials are equally to blame.
The city has had ample opportunity to also respond and also become unaffiliated with such a police force, and they haven't taken that motion or made those motions yet. So it's at this time that we'd hope that they'd join us in calling for that same outcome of dismantling the police service. I don't imagine anybody would want a police service representing them that represents this after all the reports and everything that's been filed.
Saul Mamakwa was also present at Tuesday's press conference. Later that day, during the Ontario Legislature's question period, he asked the Premier to have the Ontario Provincial Police immediately start overseeing the Thunder Bay Police Service. Ontario Solicitor General responded,
"These serious allegations must be and are being investigated by independents through the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, through the OPP. Those investigations must happen in order, exactly as you said, to bring back trust and faith in the police services in Thunder Bay and elsewhere. We've done
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
And we should not."
Thunder Bay Police Services Board is set to hold an emergency meeting this weekend to discuss those concerns. In a statement, the board chair, Kristen Oliver, said, quote, "Without trust in law enforcement from our community, the system doesn't work." We'll be following that story this week. Time for us to take one more quick break, but still ahead, we're taking you to a fish camp in the Northwest Territories. Stay with us. Saskatchewan Métis singer-songwriter whose grandfather was a residential school survivor says the meetings between Indigenous delegations and the Pope this week are a way forward. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
He couldn't say his prayers 'cause they weren't like theirs. He'd speak his native tongue, they'd say, "Listen here, son, you're just an Indian boy."
Released during the pandemic, Berg Jodoin's Indian Boy song is deeply personal. It's about his late grandfather's experience in the Catholic residential school at Onion Lake, Saskatchewan. Asked what his grandfather would think of this week's meetings with the Pope.
The odd thing with my grandfather, he was one of the most devout Catholics I've ever met. It just confused me. If they did to me what they did to him, I would like to think that I wouldn't be a devout Catholic. But I didn't go through what he went through. You know, I wasn't tore down and reprogrammed.
Growing up in northern Saskatchewan, Jodoin felt he never quite belonged. He says the Indigenous people on the reserve didn't accept him, and the white people in his hometown of Pierceland considered him Indigenous. And nothing was ever taught about residential schools in his junior high school years.
I sure heard about Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue, but I never heard about this eradication of a culture. And that's an atrocity in itself.
Jodoin says the good thing about the meetings in Rome is they keep what happened at the residential schools in the Canadian consciousness.
The one thing about history is if you bury it, it's going to happen again in one form or the other. So these things did happen, and as long as we acknowledge they happened and make sure we do something about it going forward, it won't happen again.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Across the north, March is a month of fish camps, and one popular site near Yellowknife is drawing a bigger crowd than usual. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs takes us there with this story.
Jackfish, whitefish, trout, and walleye are just some of the delicacies gifted from the waters of Tinde, Great Slave Lake.
Get on that side of the net and I'll bring the bucket over to you.
And it's here at Tachinta's Fish Camp where participants learn traditional skills required to respect and harvest in a good way. Located on Mackenzie Island, a short drive by ice road from Yellowknife, Camp Lue, meaning fish in Welliday, has been in full swing for most of March.
We started as a 1 week on the ice in one wall tent, and then the next year, last year, we had 2 weeks, and we're here on Mackenzie Island, and then this year we've built it right up because we saw the need in community.
In its third year, it's seen numerous groups, schools, and Yellowknives Dene members. Kyla Lesage is the outreach coordinator with Dechinta Center for Research and Learning. She's been here since day one.
And we always say, like, self-determination, like we're on an island, we're doing things that our elders have done in a very different way, but we're still here and we're still doing what we love. And it's definitely part of our programming to resist all of colonialism that has removed us and bring us back. And so having a program that brings us back.
You have to have respect for all the animals that feed you.
Elders teach the next generation how to clean and prepare fish.
About cutting fish and all the guts and the big, you can't pop. The most thing I like is about fish is dry fish with butter and salt.
What do you like about camp?
Sled ride.
Dechinta Bush University offers on-the-land learning and has produced dozens of graduates from its programs. But as Lesage explains, this camp has been able to reach local youth.
And so we have those little ones that you can see that are just learning even how to walk, some of them, but some of them are actually pulling and understanding the importance of setting nets and the importance of working on fish and respecting the land.
The camp puts Dene laws into practice, like sharing what you have, and that includes sharing what you know about empowerment as a woman on the land.
It means a lot on a personal level to me. I never grew up with my culture. I'm Gwich'in and Anishinaabe, but my family was removed because of residential school. So I've never grown up, traditionally, I've never grown up on the land. And now being at Dechinta, I've been able to build up that confidence to be on the land, to do what my grandmothers have done.
Charlotte Moore Jacobs, APTN National News, Mackenzie Island, Chief Dragi's territory.
Love that story. That's a look back at your APTN news from this past week. We're always thankful that you can join us. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.
Comparto, non abbiamo messo delle sigle sulla manifestazione.